is conducting the transfer of military units from the 2nd Army Corps and from others units to this direction. The most complicated but fully controlled situation is in Siversky and Bakhmut directions, where the adversary is trying to provide offensive to the direction of Siversk and Bakhmut. During the recent weeks, the adversary has conducted missile and aircraft hits in Bakhmut, Konstantinivka, Soledar, Spirne, Chasiv Yar, Samogirya, Pokrovske, Berestovo, Novoluhanske, Grigorivka, and also against Vuhlegirska heat power plant. As for Kiev, Zaporizhia regions, the adversary went on with systematic fire impact onto the defense forces of Ukraine. Around Avdiivka, Novomykhailivka, Kamenka, Vuhledar, Mariinka, Krasnohorivka, New York and Kamensk, the aircraft missiles were provided. The missile strikes of the adversary were under Opisky, Kurakhove, Vidradne, Shevchenkove and also Vesela Dolina. We need to mention that not a single settlement at the offensive direction of the occupier was avoiding their missiles or artillery armament, the so-called Liberation Army armament, and in some of the settlements there are no residential blocks left. In this way, the Russian troops are ongoing to bring Russian world to the settlements and villages of Luhansk and Donetsk regions, destroying schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and leaving the local residents without accommodation, and they deprive them of their right to exist in the civilized world. At Kryvyi Rih and Mykolaiv directions, the main forces are concentrated to deter the offensive of our troops, to strengthen their own troops in all of the direction of the reserves from Donetsk and Luhansk directions. Because of the decrease of the number of warehouses of ammunition at these directions, the activity of the shelling by the adversary was decreasing. To restore their capacity, they update their reserves from the obsolete armament, including the ones from the eastern parts of Russian Federation, and our troops are going on gradually liberating Kherson region from the occupying forces of Russia. During the last 2 weeks, Ivanivka and Lozove were liberated. This week, Andriivka was liberated. The adversary is going on with the missile and aviation hits against the civil infrastructure objects, which witnesses about the targeted decisions about Russian superiors as for genocide of Ukrainian people. Since the beginning of the month, there were 49 missile strikes and 44 artillery strikes, which fully destroyed 28 objects, including 4 schools and 9 residential buildings. Partially, there were 137 objects destroyed, 7 of them of transport infrastructure, 11 educational institutions, and 29 residential blocks. The groups of defense forces go on to provide the defense and operation within the operational zones. Within Volyn, Rivne, Zhytomyr, Chernihiv, Sumy and Odessa regions, we conduct the necessary retaining and securing national frontiers. Within Kharkiv, Donetsk and Luhansk regions, where we have the most intense combats, our units are providing defense combats, deterring the forces of the overwhelming adversary's forces. We go on the defense operation. The situation during the week has been characterized by the counter-battery fight and intelligence and surveillance to find out the critical objects of the adversary, to plan the fire against them. To conduct the awards for the military staff of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine and other military forces, the courage and heroism of the warriors in the fight for independence and territorial integrity of Ukraine, respecting their will for victory, and also to provide the traditions of the Ukrainian troops, we go on with the awards of the military units and subunits. Since the beginning of our military aggression for courage, there have been awarded 18 brigades, 2 regiments, 1 separate battalion, 1 division of the ships, and also 1 medium airborne ship. The state awards were given to 20,520 military servicemen. The Hero of Ukraine award have become 151 servicemen. In the end of my speech, I'd like to emphasize that more than 1,000 years ago, Kiev Duke Volodymyr the Great took the state decision to baptize Kievan Rus. This decision was the choice for the family of European countries. Now we are fighting not only for that historical choice, we are fighting for the future peaceful and civilized life of our children, for the will, for the opportunity to live your own life at your own land, for the eternal values of Ukrainian people. Every day the armed forces of Ukraine are fighting not only for Ukraine, but also for Europe, which is close by spirit for us, for the international security, for the future peaceful life in the world, where not a single country will be able to force their empire views and their wishes. We will definitely prevail. The God is with Ukraine, with our heroic people, with our invincible armed forces, and this is the most important thing. Thank you. I give the floor to the Major General Alexei Natochi, head of the Operations Office of the Main Directorate of the National Guard of Ukraine. Hello, dear presenters. And traditionally, the role and place of the National Guard of Ukraine in the repulsion of military aggression as of the 27th of July. The military units of the National Guard of Ukraine within the defined groups of the armed forces of Ukraine are going on to take part in the defense operation in Slobozhansky, Donetsk, Pivdenny Bug operational regions, in the deterring of the offensive of the overwhelming forces of the adversary around Kharkiv, Slovyansk, Siversk, in the defense of the cities of Kryvyi Rih, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, where the main forces are concentrated to the deliberate denial of the advance of the adversary in the directions of Berislav, Kryvyi Rih, Guayapole, Zaporizhia, and also the retaining of the parts of the seashore, the defense and security of the objects of critical infrastructure. As for the northern western operational zone, Volyn, Polisia and Siversk operational regions, with the cooperation with the State Border Service and Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard is providing the securing of national frontiers with the Republic of Belarus. With beyond the military zone, in the southern western operational zone, that is Lviv, Carpathian, Bukovina and Podila operational regions, we go on to provide stabilization actions and territorial defense. Within the stabilization operations, the mission accomplishment of the territorial defense, the main forces were concentrated to defense and protect the important state objects, the guard of the defense of the state officials, authorities and consulates, the objects of the critical infrastructure, and also the retaining of anti-saboteur and anti-airborne reserve. Besides that, to support the land forces of the armed forces, the aviation of the National Guard during this report period has provided 23 helicopter flights. They organized the area medical evacuation and transport transfer of 27 helicopter flights. The intelligence units of the National Guard have found 691 aim of the adversary, and the observer posts 138 out of them, and also the UAVs have found out of them 553 of them. Because of the shelling of Russian troops, the infrastructure and residential blocks of Ukrainians have been destroyed, and unexploded missiles and shells of occupiers create the danger which is the threat for the life and health of the local residents. The demining groups of the National Guard go on to observe the territories of the communities which are affected by the adversary's fire, like Kryvyi Rih district, Zelenodolsk and Apostoliv communities at Dnipropetrovsk region, and also settlements of Berislav district of Kherson region. The outcome, the engineer units have got rid of more than 1.5 thousand of exploded objects, and also we are demining the pools at Kiev region, have observed the 15 square kilometers of the Dnieper river, and the results of the isolation measures at the checkpoints. The servicemen of the National Guard, both on their own and in the cooperation with the National Police, the law enforcement of the armed forces and the territorial defense, 24/7, they go on to accomplish the missions at the checkpoints. As of now, the National Guard has accomplished the tasks at 181 checkpoints in 13 regions of Ukraine. 35 of them are in Kiev city. The outcomes of the special missions, they were suspended for the criminal and administrative crimes 3,847 persons, in particular the criminal 608 ones. Altogether, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there have been suspended more than 22,000 of people. Out of them, 377 with a suspicion in the participants of the saboteur group. There have been taken and seized 138 firearms, approximately 12,000 of ammunition, and approximately 82 grenades, 3 mine throwers, 18 kilos of exploding devices, 6 anti-tank mines, 22 artillery shells. The examples of the successful military accomplishments during the recent times. We go on to destroy the air games or air goals of the, for instance, on the 16th of July, with the use of the multiple launch rocket system, we shot down the cruise missile, and on the 17th of July, we shot down Su-25 aircraft. There were 7 goals hit, 6 aircrafts and 1 cruise missiles. By the way, it was done by the hero of Ukraine. During the anti-terroristic measures, together with the security service, the National Police of Ukraine, the State Emergency Service at Chernihiv region, the National Guard has found out 1 machine gun, 5 ammunition units for the MLRSs, and 2 shells of 125 millimeters. The servicemen of the National Guard, with the help of the civilians, have found and taken the person who was taking pictures of the objects of strategic significance. It turned out to be the person from Kamchatka region, but he has the citizenship of Ukraine. In the cell phone, they found out the phone numbers which belong to the regions and operations of cell phone coverage of Russian Federation, and the pictures of important objects of strategic significance. The National Guard is doing whatever is possible to provide treatment and restorage of the life of the servicemen who were wounded and injured and came back from the capture. Having the deals with the countries with whom we cooperated for a long time, we provide the treatment and rehabilitation of our warriors abroad. As of now, abroad, we provide the treatment and rehabilitation for 45 servicemen of the National Guard. We conduct the work and go with the negotiations to go on with the treatment of our National Guard employees further on. We are grateful to the countries, organizations and volunteers which are helping Ukrainian servicemen to come back to the armed forces. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Leonid Baran, Director of the State Border Security Department. Please, what is happening now at our borders? Thank you. Good day, dear ladies and gentlemen, and my sincere congratulations with the Ukrainian Day of Statehood. I would like to begin with the words that almost for 31 years the border service of Ukraine is reliably protecting the national frontiers, restoring the independent Ukrainian state. And for 155 days, the State Border Service is going on to courageously protect Ukraine within the defense forces and to provide the security at the parts of the borders where the situation is still very complicated. I will mention that the Border Service is still keeping and retaining the positions at the east and south of our state under constant shellings of the adversary, repulsing this military aggression. We are acting together with the armed forces and the National Guard of Ukraine according to the whole idea of the General Staff. Taking into consideration the peculiarity, we're actively using the border units of the UAVs, which are efficiently acting not only for the civilians and intelligence, and also to hit against the positions of the adversary. At the border with Russia, with with the formation of the adversary to provide advances are not observed, but still Russia is going on concentrating some of the forces, first and foremost to demonstrate their presence and also to deter our defense systems at the frontiers of the Ukrainian state. The aggressor is still going on with military provocations, shelling from their territory the border regions. The fire is conducted daily by the adversary. They use artillery, aviation, and any other shelling against the civilians. It is not also only the threat for the military, but also for the civilians, because the civil infrastructure is being destroyed as well. Recently, we see more attacks like this at Sumy region. During the last week, we have registered 78 shellings of these territories. Altogether, since the 10th of April, since our units have got the state border, the enemy has already conducted more than 1,000 shellings. 56 of them were using the aviation. We are also establishing and fortifying these positions. Last week, the head of the border service has personally checked the mission accomplishment at the border and the measures on the fortification of the border regions. The border service, together with other defense forces, are doing whatever is possible. They provide the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance of the territory. They provide some of the obstacles, checkpoints, and also they're working on all the necessary measures of interaction between the units of the forces. At Belarus part of the state border, we do not see substantial changes of the situation and the character of the actions of the armed forces of Belarus. They still go on securing the frontiers from Brest and Homel parts. Sometimes they are showing off, providing military trainings, including the artillery shelling. Still, the manning, the staff is not changing. The number of people is not changing. They still rotate some of the units. There are no signs of the offensive from Belarusian territory. As for the border regions of these countries, they provide the engineering establishment measures, and also we register the active use of the radar systems to make the observance over their territory more complicated. I will add you that the border with the aggressor country and the border with its satellite and the Transnistria segment at the border with Moldova, with all of the forces of Ukraine, is still strengthened. We are doing whatever is possible to protect the border and not to allow the escalation of the situation. We also need to mention that gradually we get back the citizens of Ukraine from these countries. During the last week, we've registered the arrival through the closed checkpoints of 138 persons, and since the beginning of April, more than 1,400 Ukrainians have come back home. As for the EU countries and Moldova countries, which are friendly, the average daily crossing of the border is about 90,000 people to both directions, approximately 20,000 of transport vehicles. Some days this indicator was almost 100,000 persons per day. We still see the intention of our citizens to come back to Ukraine, but still I need to see that this movement is very dynamic. Before the weekend, we can see that the citizens are leaving more, but the difference is not that substantial. During other days, more people are coming to Ukraine. Then this difference can be up to 10,000 people. So as of now, there are no queues and lines for leaving of the vehicles from Ukraine after the zero customs clearance was cancelled. So you can follow the situation at our websites. And considering the military mode and also the actions of the state border for some of the categories of persons, the state border service has improved the works of the chatbots at the official website of the institution and in Telegram app for people to get to know as soon as possible about the rules of the border crossing, some of the updates and restrictions about men of the age category 18 to 60, safety and to get lots of other answers for their questions. To use these resources, undoubtedly you can save your time in comparison with your phone calls. Besides that, we conduct the permanent communication with the neighboring countries to provide common measures to increase the throughput capacity in the checkpoints, especially about the trucks, because knowing the blockage of the seaports, we have to increase the logistics at the western borders. And also because of the restrictions at the border crossing, the border service daily do not allow some of the categories who have to be restricted. We did not let for 158 people to get through the border, and also we take the violators who try to cross the border illegally, both in the checkpoints and beyond the checkpoints, using the fake documents. There were 25 of them during the last day like this. Since the 24th of February, at the green part of the border, we've took more than 4,300 of those in fact, perpetrators, and they were trying to use fake documents. To conclude, dear colleagues, I would like to assure you that the border service of Ukraine is going on to responsibly, with the commitment, try to accomplish all of the missions to protect our state. Thank you, all of you, for the attention. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. I'd like to to invite all of the speakers for the questions from the journalists. Dear colleagues, you can pose your questions using the microphones, and don't forget to introduce yourselves. Ukrinform, Marina Kožuchara. If I may, I've got the question to Oleksiy Natochi. Which provocations could be possible close to Odessa port, taking into account the opening of the green corridors? And will the military accompany the ships with grains? And the second question, is it true that we had some information that in the south about 10,000 of Russian servicemen can be encircled? Is it true? As for the provocations which can take place in Odessa region, together with other structures of security and defense sector, we are following this situation. According to our experts, there are some of the options how events can develop. We have some of the measures conducted against that. As for the accompanying, well, which measures? Sorry, I cannot tell you now. But there are some of the measures taken. As for the accompanying of the transport with grains, the armed forces of Ukraine, directly the Navy, is ready to conduct those measures, but all of that will be done according to the development of events. The General Staff has created the coordination group which is dealing with this issue directly. As of the encirclement of Russian military, as for the offensive of our troops, we would like it to be true. We would like that to be 10,000 of servicemen. But we understand that the adversary, when he hears about the threat of encirclement, he will take back. We should, of course, have the prisoners of war from Russian Federation, but que sera, sera. Whatever will be, will be. We are doing whatever is possible. I will not tell you in more details about the situation and what we plan for the future. Undoubtedly, the territories will be liberated. Thank you. Any other questions? So, Tokyo headquarters, could you please now see it, the temporarily occupied territories after the full scale of invasion of Russia against the territory of Ukraine, in the process of self-organization, can we see some of the norms of the case law among the or any other law forms in the self-organization of the population? Who are you asking? I'm asking Ms. Hanna Mahler. Okay. Which norms do you mean? Which norms do you mean of the law? Let's clarify that. The norms, the law norms of the custom law, which are the population is creating itself under occupation. Do you mean some, I don't know, lynching or marriages? I don't know. It can be the norm of this custom law as well. I don't know what you mean. Okay, well, let alone the jokes. At the temporarily occupied territories, we have the very complicated situation for our citizens because Russia is forcefully imposing their authorities and is trying to provide the same totalitarian regimen as Russia has. And Ukrainians are the free nation. Ukrainians cannot live under such conditions. I've already mentioned that the Russians are trying to integrate themselves into all of the spheres of life at the temporarily occupied territories to Russian Federation, but they failed to do that thanks to the resistance of the local population of our Ukrainian citizens who are now there. I guess that it's a bit too early to speak about custom law or anything like that. I think that the resistance of our citizens is relevant now, and they don't want to cooperate with the enemy. Thank you. Any other questions?
This is NHK from Japan. Hi, this is NHK from Japan. We saw some reports that in Beach Hold this morning, some attack has happened. Could you explain what was the target and how many people were injured or some casualties?
Пан Олексій, мабуть, до вас.
Alexei, is this the question to you? I guess so. As far as I understand, you mean the shellings of our territories of Kiev region and Chernihiv region, right? Yes, okay. Yes, really, about 5 a.m. the adversary had the missile hits of 6 cruise missiles of caliber against the military unit in Lutizh of Kiev region. As of today, we have the information that 3 buildings, 1 building is destroyed and 2 buildings were damaged. Besides that, 1 cruise missile was hit down in the air. The adversary had the missile hit from the Black Sea. As for Chernihiv region, since 5:25 till 6:30 a.m., the settlement of Honcharivsky of Chernihiv region was also under shelling. There was the missile shelling and MLRS shelling, multiple launch rocket system. About 20 shells were hitting the positions of our troops. As of now, we know that the launch was done from Zyabrovka of Republic of Belarus. There are some of the casualties, but we need to clarify them. And the second part of the question, what's the aim? What was the aim of such attacks? Would they just go on with the genocide of our nation? That's it. Any other questions? I would like to thank the government of Japan for the equipment, medical equipment for our medical hospitals. And last week we had the meeting with the representative of UNOPS who is working with the government of Japan, and we know about the programs which are now implemented by the government of Japan to support Ukraine. Thank you so much for that. Any other questions? Hello, information agency Reuters. Can Ukraine officially confirm that the bridge, Antonivsky Bridge, cannot function as a transport artery both for the civilians and the military, the occupying forces? And how is it connected with the counter-offensive in the south of Ukraine? Thank you. Well, directly the significance of Antonivsky Bridge for the defense of the adversary and for the offensive of our forces has really great significance. Our forces and measures are used to deprive the adversary of the opportunity to conduct the shellings of our territories. So we are firing against the warehouses and arsenals of the adversaries created at the temporarily occupied territories. And one of the tasks is to cut their logistics supplies and the ways of supply of ammunition, the ways of the reserve troops to the frontline combat areas. Yes, we have conducted certain impact against the Antonivsky Bridge. The adversary, it was done for more than once. The adversary was trying to restore it, to reconstruct it further. We also had some measures, additional measures. So as for now, there is a substantial damage to the construction of the bridges. We can foresee that the adversary will try to reconstruct, to restore the bridge. We are ready for that. And you will hear about our next actions later. I thank you. We had Alexei Gromov, Leonid Baran, Hanna Malar, and Alexei Natochi. Thank you, dear friends, again. I congratulate you with our holiday. We believe in our armed forces and working together for the victory. Glory to Ukraine.